Should you buy Far Cry 6 in 2022? Far Cry 6 released about 9 months ago, and when I first played it I was somewhat positive, despite rushing through it since everyone and their mum got review copies and I didn't, so I kinda felt forced to rush through it. However, over the last year I've been on a bit of a Far Cry binge, playing through Far Cry 3, 4 and 5, so I thought I'd wrap it up here with Far Cry 6 once again, and my thoughts are pretty different after replaying the others. We'll be talking about the story and the gameplay, so skip to the timestamps down below to the bits you actually care about, and there will be no spoilers in this review other than a few weapons and locations. The way the story of Far Cry 6 is told is a bit of a mess. It feels like Far Cry 6 was originally supposed to be a dark, gritty story exploring the unlimited amount of issues dictatorships cause and the effects those issues have on the people, but it also feels like Far Cry 6 wants to be this incredibly goofy, action-focused Michael Bay explosion fest, so neither side really feels fleshed out or polished. Tone is really important when crafting a story like this, and I really think it's unbalanced here. A bit of humour is good, don't get me wrong, but you've got Anton, the main villain, having these really great speeches and delving into many different themes, and then you've got your main character Danny cracking jokes after brutally stabbing and shooting fellas who are just doing their jobs. It really doesn't balance tone very well at all. That being said, the presentation of the cutscenes, soundtrack and performances are all top tier here. This is the best Far Cry has ever had. Ubisoft have actually developed third-person cutscenes that actually look pretty good as well. I personally prefer these first-person games to remain first-person, even in cutscenes, to avoid breaking immersion, but that is just me. Danny is pretty likable. I preferred the female voice actor, but I did mess around on another save with the male Danny so I don't accidentally spoil anything for you guys. Her character is pretty likable most of the time, but there's still this really weird issue when it comes to Ubisoft writing with your protagonists, especially ones that have voices. Far Cry 5 managed to avoid this because there was no voice for the main character, but Danny is murdering people left, right and centre, and she's just cracking jokes. I just can't stand that kind of lack of tonal consistency when it comes to characters like that, especially a main character. Choose what kind of story you want to tell. Do you want this dark, gritty, really just messed up story, or do you want this comedy, action, Michael Bay stuff? You gotta choose one, Ubisoft. You can't have both worlds. I wish it could, but it's just not possible. It hasn't been done. At least I don't think it has. The villains Anton and Diego, which is Anton's son, are great. You don't see much of Anton when you compare his screen time to the actual length of Far Cry 6, and don't worry, we'll get into that, but the time we do get with Anton is not wasted. Every scene feels like it has a purpose to grow or explore Anton's character, and by the end, without saying too much, there is always two sides to every story, or perhaps there's like 15 different sides to every story. It is up to you if you agree with Anton and his actions and motivations, but I also feel like this was a much more nuanced and subtle performance compared to the likes of Vass, Pagan and Joseph Seed, and it was a really nice breath of fresh contaminated air. Now, for the groups you actually ally with in the game, I really think they suck. I didn't really like any of the characters, and I just thought I was some morally corrupt asshole, but I just don't like them. There's a few different groups spread over the gigantic map, and all of them just feel very obnoxious, or like they were written by 12-year-olds, joke after joke, murder after murder, etc, etc. I just don't like them, but that's just me. The characters just... There's no depth to any of the characters, I don't think, at least when it comes to the allies, because you've got Danny and there's a bit of depth there because you actually stick with her, but everyone else is just like, go do this, oh haha, I make jokes, oh look at me, I play music, oh look, I'm definitely not going to betray you even though I've just made it very clear I'm about to betray you. There's just no depth to it, and it was really boring to listen to, and I didn't care about any of the characters, and you can't skip some of the cutscenes. That really annoyed me. Now, the length of Far Cry 6 is where a lot of the issues start to crop up. The story is stupidly long for what it's trying to tell. You're looking at a good 20 to 30 hours of doing the same thing over and over again, just with different bosses at the end of specific sections, with some monologue about how you're the bad guy and he's the good guy. Oh no.
See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve.
It's just like, shut up, man. Shut up. I've been playing this game for 15 hours. I get the point. Just get on with it. I only mentioned Anton and Diego earlier because the rest of the villains suck, which just does not help the overly bloated story anyway. The longer this story went on, it just felt dragged out, and it just started to feel so boring and obnoxious and just childish. Now, I've had a few comments complaining that I usually list length as a negative thing, but I don't think that's the case. I list length as a negative thing when it starts to negatively impact my personal experience. So if you can't justify a game being 30 hours long, in my opinion, you should have cut things, and that's where my criticism of length comes in. Now, this is different for everyone. As I say, don't rely just on my review. There's plenty of other reviewers out there. I'm not unique. Go check out other reviewers, but for me, length is really important because I don't want to sit in this chair for 30 hours for a story I just don't care about. You know, it's one of them. That's why I talk about length so consistently, because a lot of games these days are overly bloated, overly long, and it just doesn't need to be that way. Despite the great presentation when it comes to performances, soundtrack, visuals, and sound in general, I really think this game should not have been 30 hours long. The story doesn't justify it, the gameplay certainly doesn't, and overall, by the time I got to the end of the story, I couldn't care less about the characters, which is a shame because the ending of this game is easily one of my favorites in this series. There's real consequences, and it felt real. Some dictators, man, I saw it there. The ending is very good. I really like the ending. A little bit anticlimactic though for certain characters, but you know, it is what it is. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the story. I still think Far Cry 3 and 4 as an overall story-focused game are better experiences, but let's get into the gameplay. So the gameplay is visually the most stunning, and yet it feels like it lacks the depth that previous Far Cry games offered, but it also feels like every other Far Cry game I've ever played. There's some minor changes like the addition of Supremos, which is like a super ability. You press V on mouse and keyboard and it launches like rockets, or you can have different customization moves for it. And it's pretty cool to use, but it's more of a gimmick if anything. You've also got customization that relies on you gathering loot rather than just money this time around, but Ubisoft also removed the skill tree completely for no reason, so they just removed a vital part of progression in their largest Far Cry game to date, which makes no sense to me. That's just another layer of progression that you've removed, making it even more bloated in a weird sense. Far Cry 5 did not have a very good skill tree, but at least there was one there. You have a lot of weapons here that all feel different and suit different playstyles, but there's also a massive flaw I found in the balancing of these weapons that remains unchanged from launch, so I'll get into that in just a moment because it really bothered me. First, let's talk about character customization. It's about as useless as a lifeguard who can't swim. Sure, it's cool to have, but it offers absolutely nothing of value to the player. Sure, it can give you a sprint boost or reduce damage, but that's it. Once again, it's nothing more than a gimmick like the Supremos. There's nothing creative about the customization here. There's no groundbreaking changes or something that's innovative in any real way. There's no real gear stats. There's nothing like that. So I have no idea why it's here unless you could buy bits of gear that look cool or something. Don't get me wrong, some of it does look cool, but it just feels completely useless. So it seems like a waste of time to go around the map looting all these areas just to get a shirt. Ooh, a shirt. That was worth the 20 minutes of traveling the map. Yay, a shirt. Woo! The AI is incredibly stupid, like it just gets unbearable with Ubisoft games now. Let me give you some context. I'm basically constantly playing through games now, and I just don't get to take breaks or have the ability to switch off while playing games anymore, which sucks, but it helps me to see how painfully awful Ubisoft AI is. It's pretty amazing how consistent Ubisoft have been in delivering the worst AI in the industry. It sucks. I don't know why they won't take a year or two just to sit back and try to develop a system that actually works properly and just spread it across different games. Obviously there's different contexts to that. You can't just use one system, but it just doesn't work here, and it hasn't for like 10 years now. Fix it, Ubisoft, for God's sake. The open world activities are copy and paste. Yep, what a surprise. Go here, blow the place up, go kill this guy, go here, do the main mission. So it's all the same. There's main missions that actually require you to climb up like 3 or 4 towers. Just that. There's nothing creative about it. You shoot 3 guys, and you climb 3 towers, and then that's the mission over. And they act like it's this amazing creative main mission. That's a side mission, Ubisoft. That is a side mission. That was originally a side mission in the previous games. Why is that a main mission? Stop it. When I say this game is too long, it's just painfully clear with the main mission design. Usually Far Cry games do have decent main missions. Like there's plenty of standouts in Far Cry 3, Far Cry 4, Far Cry 5. But man, it just seems like Far Cry 6 is just a bunch of fetch quests and waves of enemies constantly forcing you to stop to a halt and shoot in a specific direction. Waves of enemies seem to spawn in every mission, and it just gets tiresome. If I wanted to play a zombie game, Ubisoft, I would play a zombie game, not Far Cry. I really want to be more positive, but I just can't. Replaying Far Cry 6 was just painful to me, and the biggest sin here is the gunplay. It was fantastic for about an hour. I really enjoyed the variety of guns you had, as well as your ability to customize them, but one glaring issue ruined the balance for me. There is one gun, as you can see right now, that dominates everything. One-tap headshots on normal enemies? Yeah, sure. One-tap enemy brutes that were actually fun challenges in the previous games that required a lot of ammo? Yeah, sure. One-tap boss fights? Yeah, sure. It's beyond irritating that this got past playtesting. This gun that you're seeing right now, I don't know what it's called, but I used it throughout the entire game. This gun is OP, and combine it with a silencer and the terrible AI, and you've got one of the easiest games you will ever play. This really doesn't help the gunplay because it can get repetitive as well, and once you figure out this gun can one-tap anything pretty much, then you're set. Why would you use anything else? Because every other weapon feels underpowered compared to it. Even when you're a lower level, because there's levels in this game. Even as a lower level, all you gotta do is hit the head twice and they go down, even brutes, and I just couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe that. It was pointless using any other weapon. Honestly, this is the most negative I've been with a Far Cry game recently, and it just sucks because the formula of Far Cry is getting tired and boring now. Far Cry 5 got a pass because it had a lot of charm, and the side missions were actually creative, and 4 and 3 just have a specific feel to them that I'm biased towards. But I think I'm done. The next Far Cry has to change things, or I just don't see this series lasting much longer. At least as a respected series in a casual setting, it's still going to sell copies, but there's going to be no innovation. It's going to feel so just samey and boring. There's got to be innovation for the next game. Should you buy Far Cry 6? Well, you've managed to get to the end, but I personally don't think it's worth buying unless it's on sale, and a really good sale, like 50% off. Or you can use Ubisoft Plus to try it out yourself. Thank you for watching.